episode of Behind the Business, and I'm so excited. Please excuse me if my voice sounds a little. Last night was the Queen's birthday, so we were celebrating with the Queen, honey. I was out there with Beyonce and the girls, in my silver, and getting my life, and I was so inspired to bring this energy into this conversation today because the woman I'm talking to, not only do I think she's impactful, but I think when it comes to music, entertainment, and culture in general, she is someone that is a necessity in terms of development and just moving forward. So without further ado, my good friend Jan. Hi.
Hi.
How are you feeling today?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm feeling good. I feel like falling in love. I'm not gonna lie. That's how I feel. Again, fresh off the Beyonce show, and as someone who I also know loves Beyonce, I just kind of wanted to quickly ask you or get into it. Because there was a moment last night where she literally gave a spill on gratitude and was
Mhm.
just thanking everyone in her life and throughout these things. And I wanted to ask you, like, what are those like top three Beyonce songs that you're thankful for or you
Oh my
think about?
that is a great question. I would have to say, and it's probably gonna sound like cliche, but Virgo's Groove is definitely there now. Like Virgo's Groove is something when it came out, it was like endless spins for me. Um
After seeing it perform live, I was just like, oh yeah, this is a vibe.
it's amazing.
It is
Like,
Virgo's Groove and Cuff It. Yeah, yeah.
okay, yeah. And then I
Okay,
would
so Virgo's
say
Groove.
Speechless is another really I don't really
Ooh.
love Speechless and Me Myself and I. Like that one is like it don't matter what time of day, what you're going through, don't matter if I'm happy, sad, it just always hits.
Yeah,
Yeah, Me Myself.
that's and what's that? That's from the
Um
Dangerously in Love and
yeah,
the
her first solo
B-Day.
album, I believe. I believe they was both off the first. I'm not sure which one Me Myself and I was on, but I know Speechless was on her first one.
Yeah. Both
Um,
I mean both iconic, like both iconic albums, the whole thing. But yes, super excited to have you. I'm even looking at the chat. Somebody already in here like, so let's let me know. They're here for y'all. So let's get into it. For those that don't know, can you share a little bit like where you're from and how where you're from has kind of helped shaped your love for music?
yeah, so y'all Snead, y'all. I'm from Trenton, New Jersey. To be completely honest, I would say like where I'm from, this doesn't necessarily shape my love for music. It was more so my upbringing. So when I was
Mm,
3 years old, my dad put me in piano lessons, and I was in piano lessons all the way up until I was around like 12, 13. At 4, he put me in dance lessons, so I was doing ballet, tap, jazz all the way until I was around like 10. Um, I
wow.
was in the jazz band in middle school, and then the marching band and the concert band in high school.
Oh, what instrument? Was it the same instrument every time or?
So in middle school, I played the piano. So essentially, they didn't have like any piano music for the band, so they had me playing all the notes for the tuba, which was really annoying, but it was like whatever on the band. So as you can imagine, it was like really simple music. It wasn't really nothing crazy because it was just tuba. It was essentially like a bass line. And then once I transitioned to high school, I got really interested in percussion, and I can say a lot of that is
Mm,
due to what is that movie with Nick Cannon? I can't think of the name. Drumline.
drumline, classic.
I saw Drumline, and I swear to God, like as soon as I saw that, I was like, I'm playing the drums as soon as I get to high school.
Wow.
So my dad got me like a drum pad, and I learned how to play like a lot of those cadences from the movie. Tried out for the band. Well, I don't think I had to try out for the band because I was when you transition up from already being in band, they just put you in band the next year. But I did have to try out for the drum line once I got in band. So I
Got
ended
you.
up playing for the drum line for about a year during football season, and then obviously transitioned over to concert band after football season was over. But yeah, it's just like I've always been. My life has always been kind of like music. Because then even then, like ninth grade, I joined the gospel choir at my church, Shiloh Baptist
Ooh,
Church. Yeah, I was in the gospel choir.
I love that.
It is crazy. Like I feel so terrible sometimes when people ask me about it. But like I was not a church girl. I didn't grow up in the church. I literally joined the church to join the choir. Um,
And you
Yeah, it
don't
was
hear
like
those type of you don't hear those kind of stories too often. So it's either you were sometimes it's either like, well, I was told I had to be here or I gotta be with my grandmother after this. And you're literally saying, like, no, I openly joined because there was this sound movement or experience that I wanted to be a part of. That's
yeah.
that's what's up.
And then my dad was a devout Christian, but through that I went to church a couple times with him. I was like, oh, that sounds amazing. Like I got to be part of that. So yeah, so then from there, I went my first couple years of college. I was a music major. I was a voice major with a piano minor. So
Mm.
again, like I literally just like it's just been something that's been a part of me my entire life. I always knew that music was gonna end up being my career. It was like never something that I had to second guess. And I can like I wish there was some tie to like the community that made me want to be in music and work in music and perform and all that, but there just honestly there isn't really any ties here, to be honest.
Yeah, it just sounds like you've just always been musically inclined, honestly. Like that's what I pull from it. I also want to shout out our chat because they going hard for me. Somebody said Yan Lottie Dottie X. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, girl. They say, yeah, she said, Yan, you did everything. We need the mixtape. Yan, if you were to put out a mixtape, what would you call it? What would be the title of the mixtape?
It's funny that I actually was in so my first year in LA, 2020. I was working on a collaboration tape called Intentions,
Mm,
and it never came. Um,
love the name.
yeah, essentially what the concept was every song was going to be about a specific attention that you put into like a relationship. So like one song would be about
Mm.
trust, another song would be about commitments. Like we just had all these different concepts for every song that would essentially create a full body of work about the intentions that you put into a relationship. So I do have it like there's kind of I would say like I have a bunch of demos in the tuck, but it's never gonna be a mixtape, y'all. I'm sorry.
Okay, she said, "Y'all ain't getting that for me."
Yeah, no.
Now, who can you think of? Because I want to go through different eras. I want to stay in this one pocket of being in Jersey. Can you recall like those first like artists? It could be any genre that were so intentional for you that inspired you in terms of like, okay, like music is definitely a part of my life. Like I know I'm musically inclined, but this artist is, impacting me in a way that I don't even have the language for yet, because I'm thinking back to Young Yan, like before you're even like 15 years old.
So also probably cliche, but I have stories, I promise. So I would say Stevie Wonder and Michael Jackson.
Mm.
So Michael
Woo!
Jackson for me, it was like it was kind of forced onto me. Not to say I didn't enjoy it, but it was forced onto me into the sense that the dance school I went to was a black dance school, and all of like I could just remember from about 3 to 7 years old, every single dance, whether it be tap, jazz, whatever, she would have us dancing to Michael Jackson music. So like that was like
Yes.
so much of a part of me because like that's all we learned. Then of course if we're not working on our routines, she's just playing the albums in the background of our rehearsals. So I feel like I didn't really appreciate it as a kid. It was just like a kind of a common theme for a lot of the Motown and just really throwback music that I came up on. Like I really honestly I just remember sometimes some of that stuff would come on the car and I'd be like, bruh, like can we put on Aaliyah? Um, and then like similar to that, like my dad I used to be in summer camp. And I just remember so clearly every day when my dad would come get me from summer camp, like in his black, I think we had a Beamer or something, and he just would
Mm.
always have Stevie Wonder playing, like always. It was always going to be a Stevie Wonder song. And similar to like my sentiment about Mike, I would hear the music and I just be like, Dad, like, can we turn this old people music off? Like, I want to listen to like
Oh my God.
Destiny's Child, like I'm Justin Timberlake, whatever. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like as a
Ooh.
kid, because at this point I'm probably like
Yeah.
9, 10. I don't want to hear that. But it's amazing because then as an adult, you catch yourself hearing some of this stuff again, and it's like, oh, this is like incredible music,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
and like really set the standard for everything. And and then it's just like I know all the lyrics to everything because it's just embedded in the back of my mind from just hearing
Yeah.
all the time, every day. So yeah, I definitely would have to say Stevie Wonder and Michael Jackson.
I love that. I can resonate with the Michael side too, especially because me and my siblings, we used to watch that Michael Jackson movie, the six part with Angela Bassett. like over and over and over, aside from the fact that all the adults around us grew up on Michael. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like a lot of us, it's interesting because I know we've also talked about too how like some music programmers, we've had this kind of background with radio as well. You know, like I remember being in radio. I know you've been in radio, but even when I think about our first love for music, it was a Jackson. Like I know for me, if it wasn't Michael, it was definitely Janet. Like I had when I moved in my apartment, I was like, I gotta have a Janet poster on my vinyl because when I think about some of those first like visuals I saw as a kid, rather if it was on MTV or like a 25th anniversary celebrating Motown or whatever, it was the Jacksons.
Yeah.
So no, I love that. Also somebody in the chat said Jersey also gave us Lauren, SZA, and 90.
Yes, come
Y'all
on.
got heavy hitters. So
But
shout out
see,
to
like to
them
that point though, I will say, well, I didn't name them as far as just having my ties to Jersey because as a kid, I didn't know that. Like I don't know, I didn't because I didn't really grow up on R&B and hip hop outside of like Stevie Wonder and Luther Vandross and all those Motown artists of that time. Like I feel like I had to teach myself R&B and hip hop once I got to
Mm.
like the end of middle school, high school years. So like as a kid, like I had no idea who was from Jersey, who wasn't from Jersey. Like that didn't mean nothing to me.
Wow.
Um,
So that just made me think about something because I asked everybody on this show this question. Everyone has been asked, because you mentioned, you know, how you had to basically like teach yourself or you started finding what works for you, what you love the most. And that made me think about when we were all on MySpace because I feel like MySpace was also a medium and engine for us to kind of discover and show our love for music. And I have to ask, do you remember your top 8 or what artist was on your top 8?
you talking about the song on our page, right? Yeah.
It can either you can name a song or like you know how you used to have the friends like the top
My
8
friends was
or
actually my friends. I didn't have artists on my top eight. I actually had friends on there.
okay, nice. Okay, you had your friends. I did too. I had a
Yeah, I
mixture.
have my friends there. But I will say my songs. I remember the one song I had on the longest was Tanisha Kelly, "My Everything." I literally was just talking about that shit on Twitter the other day. Like Tanisha, that was on my page for such a long time.
That name is a
Um,
throwback. You just made my brain
yeah.
like open up a like chapter that I forgot was there.
I used to love that song. Oh my goodness. And I will say another thing too. Like speaking of MySpace, I have such a deep appreciation for MySpace because so much of what I do
Yes.
literally pulls from being on that platform. Like a lot of the work as far as just like programming is essentially to some degree coding. Um and even just like I can build websites and all that comes from my experience building my MySpace page and getting into the details of it and trying to make it look as custom as possible. And then in addition to that, like on the music side, MySpace really introduced me to West Coast and the West Coast sound.
Mm.
I honestly could not tell you who I had on my top eight from the West Coast, but I do remember it being a few of those artists that like were early on, like the Jerkin era, who I just gravitated towards
I
that
ain't heard that.
music. Yeah, and like I just remember too, like, oh my god, this is so many memories. Being in, I want to say the summer, it had to be seventh or eighth grade, and just all of my friends just trying to put together their own little jerking routines to go put on MySpace and YouTube, and it was
Yeah.
this whole thing. Like Jersey had a whole jerk movement. I don't care what nobody say.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, MySpace, that was a great time.
I love that. I MySpace definitely was a great time. It definitely was literally the engine for a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
things I'm even doing now. And because we keep getting so many shout outs in the chat, I also want to remind you guys that you can ask questions and we are going to answer them live. You know, this is a once in a lifetime, you know, like moment when we're able to have, you know, like Twitch open up the doors for us to have these conversations for music and community to intersect. So take advantage. That's all I'm saying. I also wanted to get into okay, now we just talked about Jersey and you know growing up there and your roots. I'm curious to know, do you remember that first like experience post college where you were like, okay, I want to continue music, whether if it's through artist developing or programming? And I guess I'm trying to rephrase the question is, once college was over, like what did that look like for you in terms of getting your foot into the door? For anybody that's like listening or curious to know how they can make a pathway for themselves. Because we do get a lot of questions sometimes on like, hey, I didn't start off in like music, how can I get my way in? Or I didn't major in music, I majored in this. So, oh, that makes sense.
So I kind of want to pivot into college more so rather than after. Um,
Hmm.
because once I realized I wanted to be in music as far as like on the back end rather than on the forefront, it's actually started in college. So like I said, I was a music major for the early years of college. So the first 2 years I was a voice major, and then once I started doing like open mics and just kind of like different performances,
Mm.
like our outdoor festivals and stuff, I very quickly realized like, I don't want to be an artist. Like this is not for me.
So
And
you originally were going to go like the
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 artist route.
the
Hmm.
okay.
Like I remember that was time my dad took me to the studio to record like covers of Alicia Keys songs. Like he wanted me to be a singer. And I'm so grateful for that because it gave me like the technical training required to know what goes into making a song, which is what a lot of my program decisions are like. They stem from
Wow.
like literally knowing music.
So you was gonna go the Jasmine Sullivan route. Like that was
Okay, yeah, I was.
that was the whole wow. I didn't
Yeah.
know that. Somebody Lottie that play. She said she can sing, y'all.
So yeah, so once I realized, I think it took a lot of real self reflection. Like I don't have the level of commitment to be an artist, and I'm not interested in developing that commitment. So like, what can I do that's still music related? That's not this.
Did you ever?
Um,
I'm curious to know because that's new to me. Like I always know you were involved in music, and you love to sing, but I didn't know like actually that was,
yeah.
like you were gonna do that first. I love that. Is there like a time or a moment where you sit back and think like, damn, I should have did it, or
Never.
you're just like, no, you're confident in your path? Yeah.
Yeah, there's never a moment. Because again, like back to that point, like you have to know yourself, and I think to that, like there's a lot of people in the space now, like as musicians, that really just don't know themselves for real. And if they did, they would know that they probably should be writers, not artists, or they should be
Ooh,
artists, because if they knew themselves, they knew that they don't have the commitment to the craft to actually go wherever it is that they think they want to go. They're telling people they want to go.
that's
Which
a
is what,
bar.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I had to do. Like, you really want to be an artist? Like, girl, no, because I'm not about to be in the studio for hours trying to crank out songs. I'm not doing that. Um, and it's not even that I don't enjoy it. It's just I just knew that wasn't me.
That it wasn't for you, right?
Yeah. So considering that, I just quickly switched my major to comms and I changed to digital media and PR. So that's actually what my degree ended up being in, and then I had enough credits to have music down as my minor when I graduated. So my path into music started at that point. Like once I realized like I'm gonna be on the back end somehow, like I didn't know exactly what I was gonna do because at first I wanted to do like PR communications. Like once I realized that, that's when I started kind of trying to create relationships for myself with people that are already in that space and trying to find ways to elevate myself as someone in media in general so that once I graduate I would be a familiar name.
Mm.
So what that looked like for me was, I want to say 20, it had to be like 2013, 14. I started a blog with a couple of my homegirls. It was called the Coffee Shop Vlog, actually, not a blog, a vlog with a V.
Wow.
It was a video
The
vlog.
blog era. Whoo.
Yeah. And essentially what we would do was we would go around campus and like different events. Like we went to Rutgers homecoming and stuff like that, and we would essentially just have a taboo topic that we would ask everybody their opinions on, and then we would just have like this compilation video of all these different college students' answers about whatever topic that we're talking about. And then eventually, obviously, we turn the cameras on ourselves and we're just having conversations within ourselves and our friends group on camera about what we think about certain things. And honestly, looking back on it, it's like some of these topics are just like, y'all are doing too much. Like, what is a hoe? What is a one night stand? Stuff like that. Like, and it was funny because it got attention. Like, we're in college. That's what we've been talking about in college.
Mm.
So it worked. It definitely like some of them were on that website Bossip. Like our videos made it to Bossip.
Mm.
Like this stuff went viral. And from there, it's like I know I want to be in media. I don't know if I want to be a media personality. Because I enjoyed being behind the camera rather than in front of it, trying to be a person on screen, and like I just like the idea of directing things. Um,
Mm, yes.
yeah, so from there we transitioned it into a podcast because not everybody wants to be on camera. So we went from the vlog to the coffee shop podcast, and similar topics, but we would talk more to like musicians, and we would talk amongst ourselves rather than having all these different guests. It
Was
didn't
this based
last.
out of New York?
This was based in Jersey.
Jersey. Okay. Okay.
So then from there we transitioned. We kind of just transitioned out of doing it altogether because we it just kind of it didn't really hit like the videos. However, I'm grateful for the experience because then I went into doing podcasting with another friend of mine, which actually is kind of where I started developing my name. So I did this podcast called Podcast About Nothing, inspired by Wale. Um,
Hey.
and we did it for I want to say 4 or 5 seasons. Like it was at least 200 episodes. And essentially we would interview just different artists within Jersey. We would interview business owners. We would interview producers, whoever like was trying to make a name for themselves and was black. We were interviewing them on a podcast and just talking about everything from relationships to working in music to whatever their craft is, and like we just had a lot of different conversations. And that's kind of where my real entry to the music industry was, because from there I got picked up as the editor in chief of this production company called Dinnerland, which is where a lot of people know me from.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of content with a lot of artists, a lot of different events with a lot of our peers. That kind of leads me to Audio Mac, where I started programming and doing playlists for them because of the partnership we had with Dinnerland. And from there, it was just up. So it was like, I would honestly say, and like a lot of people don't realize, my path was like kind of all over the place. Like I wanted to be this, and then I was like, I don't want to be a singer. Then I was the media personality, I don't want to be a media personality because I don't like being on camera or whatever the case is. Um, but one thing that was always like true that went through everything was I want to work in music because I love music and I'm good at it.
Yeah, I think that's important though, because especially for the young people and our peers sometimes that even like watch this show, I think it's inspiring to know that like you can really create your own lane. You know what I'm saying? Like you can create, the world that you want to cultivate to get your dreams off. We got a question from J Frank 7. They want to know, how long does it take to get in the industry without companies like a UMG or a Pandora, etc. I can go first because you just dropped some gems and that was a lot. Again, to pivot back to the idea of, like there's a lane for everyone. And I think I say the same thing kind of about like school and college. Like I'm never that person that's like, don't go to school. Like you shouldn't go to school. Like I personally think school is for everybody. I think the issue is everybody, to your point, is not really sure what they want to focus on yet. Even when I think about early, how when certain people go to college, I'm like, yeah, but I know 25-year-olds that don't know what they wanted to do yet. So I can understand why that person don't know they major and that's not their path. You get what I'm saying? So I think to answer your question, J Frank 7, like it really does. Like how long does it take is that's a complex question because I feel like everybody's path is different. I also think too, like passion and discipline really does go hand in key. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I really do think if you're really like passionate and 10 toes down about a vision you're willing to create, but you also have to have that support system around too. So I will say, like the road and how long it takes, I feel like it's also dependent on your well-being and your environment too. Because I really can't say like it takes this amount of time or this amount of time. Everyone is different. It's somebody that literally can wake up tomorrow and say, I want to do this and make a post on Instagram and be viral. Like, you know what I'm saying? That's just because of how it works for them. And it's like, okay, got it. Um, hey, thank you, Solomon. Solomon, he didn't say passion and discipline always makes the difference for sure. Um, yeah, I don't know.
totally agree with you. Like I feel like I I don't necessarily ever have an answer for that question because I know, like you just said, there's people who will graduate college and then within a month they got a job at a label. I know for me personally, it took me 8 years to get to Pandora, and prior to that, I was
Mm.
doing everything independently, and it was just like I was passionate, I was dedicated, everything that you need in the book to get a job in the music industry, and I just was not getting hired. And I don't know if it might have been I didn't have the right relationships. I might not have been portraying the work I'm doing across the right way to make it seem like I'd be a good candidate for some of these roles. Maybe my resume didn't look the way it needed
Mm.
to look. Like there's just so many different factors that kind
Yeah.
of really led to why I wasn't getting any jobs, but it just was not happening. And then
It's
even with
important though. I didn't mean to cut you off. My bad.
you could go ahead.
I was just gonna say no. That's important because I feel like that's the part people who are in music or the quote unquote industry. I don't even like that word. I think that's the part they don't understand. Like it's a lot of factors that play a
Yeah.
role, like relationships, timing, the
Yeah.
season.
So it's like I don't know, you really just got to be prepared because at any moment something can happen for you, which is what happened for me, right? So when Pandora was hiring, I had no clue Pandora was hiring. I didn't ever
Mm,
like I wanted to be in hip hop, to be honest with you. Like my first
mm.
love was hip hop and that's what I wanted to do and that's the space I was working within independently. But I also was doing a lot of hip or R&B playlists on my own. So someone saw that and was like, "Yo, Pandora's hiring. I think you'd be great for this." And literally, like, had one interview with the head of R&B, and that was it. Like, as soon as he had that interview with me, he was like, "Yeah, you in there."
Wow.
Rest is
And you've been
history.
up ever since. And I think it's the perfect, I think it's the perfect like pivot to go into because again, we definitely have championed you here as, like a programmer for Pandora. And we're so appreciative too. I want to say, especially behalf on UMG. I don't know, hi Lucian. I don't know if he's listening or watching, but I want to say we appreciate it because like you have so many hands on so many different projects. And I know it takes a lot of mental capacity to be able to have the bandwidth to manage, prioritize all of this was coming in. There's so many different music platforms today. Now there's new platforms coming out that I have to learn about. There's like untitled streams, there's band labs, there's like all these different mediums going on that could sometimes create platform fatigue. So I'm curious to know, what do you think it takes to in this specific era? And I want to speak to, especially because we just got a question, well, not a question, a comment that says we need you in R&B on. What do
I
you think it takes to quote unquote break? And I want to speak to R&B specifically. Hey, not hey Lucian. I said, um,
um,
what does
besides
it
that,
take to break R&B artists today in this time?
I feel like this conversation is so layered because we look at the past and how many like legendary stars we were able to develop and still have like these lasting impacts today, like Beyonce, for example.
Yes.
And
And to be able to bring out somebody like Diana Ross,
yeah, that's come on.
and they both are still like, no, like seriously, that is,
Mhm.
and even Kendrick. I know we were talking about R&B a little
Yeah,
bit,
but
but I'm
he's
gonna
like
mention
one of the greatest rappers ever. And I feel
period.
like,
Yeah.
listen, like I feel like she brought him out very intentionally, and that was a whole nother thing. Like I thought that was amazing that she brought him out. I can't remember what song it was, but I remember when I saw the clip, I was like, "There's a reason why
America
she
has a
brought him out."
problem.
Yeah, there was a reason why she brought him out for like that song in LA in his city. Like it just made so much sense.
The
Um,
EP we gotta get intention. Somebody said you need to drop it on SoundCloud.
but I just it's hard to really like there isn't a way to break an artist right now. And I think like there was an
Mm.
article that went viral the other day about music industry execs being depressed about not knowing essentially what to do. That was horrible, y'all. I'm gonna just say that was
It
not a
was
good
very,
look.
it was very lazy work,
It
and
was
that was
very
some.
lazy. And whoever said that, like you're depressed, like come on guys, y'all gotta do better than that. Um maybe tapped out, maybe confused, I don't know,
That's funny.
but I just feel like in the era like of anywhere between shit like the 70s all the way up to the 2010s, you had like literal machines and everybody was working in cohesion. Like the radio was in tandem with the label, was in tandem with the promo team, was in tandem with
Yep.
the artist, was in tandem with the manager, was in tandem with the influencers. Like everybody was all working on one mission of breaking this artist to the mainstream. Whereas now you got, and it's not a problem. So I don't say this as shade, but it's just what it is. But now you have this R&B curator here, this R&B curator there, with that taste versus this taste versus
Yep.
this R&B curator's taste versus this publicist's taste, and like everybody just has their own taste, and it's hard to get everybody on one accord, and that's just curation. We're not even talking about radio. Like radio is not necessarily matching what curation is doing. So I could put
Woo!
XYZ songs on the biggest playlist we got, and these songs could touch a million spins, and radio does not care. Like that's not their priority. So it's like there's no real cohesion there. So you can't really say, well, if you do XYZ, then we're gonna break an artist. It's not how it works. So in today's era, you see a lot more like the artists and their team has to do a lot more of that groundwork. It's not really the label in the way that it was before.
Oh, it's so true. And I literally just shout out to Mike Begain, the head of our department. I literally just had a conversation with him where, to your point, because like you said, it's almost, I feel like we in an era in time now where it's going back to traditional, in
Yeah,
my opinion.
I
I
agree.
literally, just to your point about the article with the when he was saying he was depressed, how that article made you feel some type of way. What article made me feel some type of way, and it's because I'm such a child of hip hop, was the is hip hop not
Oh
streaming, or is
yeah,
hip
yeah,
hop
yeah.
not this? And it's like, no, that's not it. Hip hop is always go stream. It's just back with the people now. That's
Hmm.
what it is. I feel like we got like three different chambers of music discovery now. It's social, local, and global. And I feel
Yes.
like a lot of shit is going back. Oh, excuse me. A lot of stuff is going back local. You get, and I use Sexy Red as an example all the time. How even a Travis Scott had to tap into a Sexy Red to make people remember he has an album coming. Like if Sexy Red sound bites and clips from reels and TikToks and all that was included in a metrics that could be funneled through the Billboard charts, oh, those charts will look so different. And I think
Hmm.
that would be the same for a lot of other artists too, because I can be out and about these days, Jan, and you can like hear a song and somebody next to me will say, "Oh yeah, that's the TikTok song."
Yeah.
And for people like us that are creatives and like in these spaces, it's like, wow, you correlate that to TikTok. Whereas back in the day, a Ja Rule and Ashanti video, we may have correlated that to 106 in Park
Yep.
or a BET.
Hmm.
So whenever I see this conversation like, or hip hop wasn't doing this year, it's like, no, it's not. It's just back in the hands of the people. You go to Chicago, you go back home to Cleveland, where I was just back for the summer a couple weeks. Like, no, they definitely have their hands on the bops. They know what's hot. Y'all just don't know what's hot, or y'all not doing the groundwork to really touch the people. You know what I'm saying? That's why, as someone who has, like really tried to stand tall in this, like new marketing role, special projects role UMG has had for me, because I feel like a lot of this, what's happening too, is we've lost the art of street marketing. And I think street and guerrilla marketing is what people got to get back to, because that's the real engine T. Like street marketing is one of my favorite aspects of discovery for any type of brand or like entertainment experience. We're speaking specifically for music, but I'd be like, yo, are you outside like putting your posters on the wall? Like, are you at the grocery stores? Girl, I was at Simply Wholesome. I would say, and I still got the footage because I thought it was incredible. I was at Simply Wholesome, and I was like, see, this is local music discovery. This is a local example right here. This guy stopped me and was like, "Hey, Queen." He was like, "I just wanted to let you know, like, my project is coming out. You could take a picture." I'm like, "Oh, I thought he just wanted me to take a picture of his poster."
Yeah.
He had the album cover laminated, the whole album cover, and on the back of it was a QR code that
That's fire.
and it had a donation for a Cash App box. That's local music discovery. You know what I'm saying? Like, that
Yeah.
guy can be out on Slauson and probably make $100 to $1,000 just off that run. But you mean to tell me like hip hop is not movement or streaming? I don't know. It just doesn't rest my spirit.
Yeah, and it should. And I feel like, to your point too, like another part, in my opinion, to breaking talent is like you really just, like, I hate to say it because you can't pinpoint what it is, but you have to have an it factor. Like the people have to choose you. Like you, if we can't force you onto an audience, if people don't choose you, then it's like it's not much we can do
And
beyond.
your hometown too. Like
Yeah.
I really feel like when you think of like a lot of like artists like they have their hometown and their background, like, or their hometown champion them. Those are the ones that I feel like usually go. We got a question too from Solomon Heaton. He wants to know, Jan, for indie artists trying to create cohesion without a label, what points of context do they need to have in terms of like curators, marketers? Okay, well, you got Jan here. Sorry.
I mean, I feel like the first part is really just getting everything, your branding together, as far as just like your packaging, right? So, do you have a videographer that you can tap to make sure that you always got content? Or do you have somebody that literally can just follow you all the time? That could be one of your homeboys that's just always with you recording the shit you're doing for content later. Do you have a photographer that on hand that can make sure that you always have press shots? Like I feel like one thing that I always see is like y'all are worried about streams, but you don't even got a press shot when I'm trying to get you a playlist cover. Like we got to start there, y'all. Like the basics. Um, do you have like a producer, or like is there a production team that you can always tap into to make sure that they are working with you on developing your sound? Do you have an engineer that you're always tapping that makes sure that your sound is clean and crisp, and when you send it to all these curators the shit sounds good? And I feel like, and even just outside of that, it's like, do you have somebody that can make sure your projects sound cohesive? Like, and that's not to say it's no shade to anyone, but like you can sometimes hear when XYZ songs was mixed by this person versus that person versus this person. It just it doesn't sound smooth when in your listening experience, when there's just too much going on in the production and the engineering of your projects. So I would start there, and then beyond that, then it's like,
Mm,
do you have, I wouldn't say you need a publicist early on because that's like a whole other fee. But I would say you should be doing some digging on socials to find out like who are the writers and the
yeah,
curators that you should be connected with yourself. Like I feel like that should be on you to be building relationships yourself. So that these people are always looking for your music. Like Solomon, you the perfect example. Like you tapped in with me. Like you don't have a publicist.
yeah,
And every time you got music coming, I know about it because you sent it to me via text or you email it to me, and we tapped in like that. And I feel like you guys need to do that with the writers too. Like the writers need to be checking for y'all. They doesn't it shouldn't necessarily come from an email from a publicist that they don't know. Granted, once you reach a certain level of your career, you do want to have a publicist because they're essentially crafting a story around your work for you, and that shouldn't necessarily be your job to do. Like your job should just be to focus on the music and let somebody else handle the rest. But there is levels to this, and I feel like a lot of independent artists come in immediately just looking for things that they don't need, like even management. You
oh
don't
yes, oh my god, I'm so happy you brought that up. Yes, it's like you don't even
you don't need a manager if you don't have business to manage. Period.
or
Like I'm that's not even shade. Like you really
yeah,
don't, like your music is not where it needs to be for you to be requiring a manager yet. Like if you find one in your path early, great. Keep them and value them and treat them like, give them equity in your shit because you're gonna need them. But if you don't have one yet and your shit is not moving like that, excuse my language, y'all. But if it's not moving like that yet, you don't need to be stressed about a manager. Like just work on your craft and utilize social media to create or make yourself a priority to people. Like people need to check for you because they like what you're doing and like how you're presenting yourself online or in person. Like what street marketing are you doing? Like are you outside touching people? Are you doing open mics? Are you doing all these different events? Are you asking people who throw events like, yo, can I get on your stage? Like make sure that people know who you are, and then you can worry about management when when your business needs to be managed. But other than that, there's just all these different pieces that you as an artist need to focus on getting together first before you worry about paying all these other people outside to try to help you along your path.
exactly. And I also think too, even before that, like if you're going to be out here doing business deals X, Y, and Z and really building a name for yourself, like you should maybe look into a lawyer first.
Oh, that
Maybe get
too.
maybe get that like make sure your T's is crossed and your I's is dotted before you just out here, and honestly, this is speaking from, like experience as well too. You know what I'm saying? And just from like really wanting, like artists to really think about their well-being first, because I feel like what also happens sometimes for independent artists is they either unfortunately like subconsciously become jaded and the pathway to, like developing, like they don't want to sometimes because they so stressed their bandwidth, like, well, nobody's supporting me, so now I don't feel like. But it's like you got to champion yourself. We rooting for you, we supporting you, but we got to also see that you're champion that. And shout out to Lottie because she said get your press shots, and I'm so happy she said that, because I do feel like, and you brought this up earlier, how like things are changing. I do like feel like that's now, if it wasn't before, I need these newer artists to understand like that is a part of your development.
Mhm.
Like, don't be sending me headshots or selfies.
Yeah.
Like, that stuff is crazy. And like and it's also why too, I'm glad we're talking on this, because we're celebrating the 50th anniversary of hip hop. And not only just the arts, but I think even with hip hop specifically, photographers are so important.
Yes.
Like prior to, really having a love and admiration for artists, outside of that, it's just, people who amplify and have taste in general. And photographers have always been like people I have championed and worked with, and I want to continue to work with, because I feel like you don't have a lot of our moments without the photographer. You don't
Mm.
have a lot of experiences that we have talked about for years or years or years without like people like photographers and directors. You know what I'm saying? You don't have a Belly without a Hype Williams. You know, you don't really have a lot of our iconic moments without, the people behind the lens. So I wanted to get into one more question before I go into a game. Because I love curating segments that are dedicated to our special guest. But I wanted to know, we touched on developing artists. We touched on what's needed in terms of where you're at on the stage of your career, and is a manager necessary? Is a publicist necessary? Is this necessary? I'm curious to know, what do you think? Because we've talked about artist development. Now I want to go into like programming and playlisting a little bit, because I feel like playlisting is even entering a new era.
Yeah.
Like, what are the pros and cons of playlisting, and what does playlisting you think look like within the next 5 years?
Woo, that's a lot of question.
Oh,
Um,
I'm sorry.
so I will say the pros and cons. Like the pros, obviously, is through programming we are able to essentially help you build your audience, right? So we, as playlisters at these different companies, so the technical term for it is programmers or music
Mhm.
programmers. So as programmers at these different companies, we have access to upwards of 100 playlists per genre for some genres.
Wow.
Some a little less, but I'm sure, like I know Spotify has hundreds of playlists. And I know even us in R&B space, we have a cool at least 80, I believe. And
Wow.
each of those different playlists obviously have different levels of audience numbers. Like the listening numbers are a lot different on each of them, which kind of like gives us a way to essentially feed you through the different playlists to see how you work. Like for example, we might have a playlist that has 2,000 listeners versus another one that might have 2 million. So of course, if you're an independent artist who people aren't familiar with, we're not going to drop you on the 2 million out the gate, because we want to see where you fit at throughout our playlist. So we might,
Right.
and if you perform well there, then we'll move you along to bigger ones and bigger ones as you keep doing well on these stations. And what happens is, while we're growing you that way, your audience is also growing, because now you are being put in front of different audiences that are the audiences of those playlists individually. Another thing a lot of DSPs are able to do is algorithmic programming, where essentially, like, if we feel like your song would be a good fit for a certain station, like I know Pandora in particular, I can't speak to other DSPs. We have artist seeds, which are like Chris
Who was
Brown
that?
radio. It's like Chris Brown radio, Mariah Carey radio, like whatever artist radio, it's called an artist seed. And a lot of those stations actually have way more listeners than editorial stations because people are like Chris
Mm.
Brown radio has millions of listeners because it's Chris Brown. I believe he's our biggest, one of our biggest artists on the
I can
platform.
see that. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so imagine like if we feel like your song fits within like the Chris Brown sound, we can playlist you there on his seed, and then that's a whole nother audience that we're introducing you to that'll help grow your audience. So in that regard, playlisting is so pivotal because it's literally just drag and drop. We are putting you in front of an audience immediately. It's instant. And people, their careers break off playlisting because it's like one good playlist placement and everybody knows who you are out the gate. The problem is if you're not doing the work to develop yourself outside of digitally, it's hard to keep up with the growth that you'll see from playlisting, right? So you
Yeah.
get a
Yeah.
Spotify placement that now has you at 200,000 listeners monthly, but you only have two songs out. If you don't have that catalog of records ready to go like soon, that listenership is going to fall off because we're not
Yep.
trying to hear two songs for 5 months. Like you need more. And I feel like a lot of these artists, and it's not a bad thing, like you just need to be prepared. But a lot of these artists get some of these really big placements and they don't know what to do with it because they're not prepared for that moment. And then once that moment
Mm.
comes, you can't maintain it because you don't have no press shots. You don't have content lined up
They're
to
not
keep that
leveraging.
moment,
Yeah.
literally. So it's like it's great. It's great that we have
Wow.
playlisting now to help you build your audience, but then it's like, what are you gonna do to maintain it? Like you now have to take that and run with it and like just take off. And a lot of people they get that look and then they don't take off, and then you see why they go from like 100K listeners for these 2 months to now they only have 3,000. Is because they didn't take off with it. Like you didn't do nothing with it, and it's frustrating because it's like that could be heartbreaking for an artist. Like, dang, what happened to the listeners? And it's like, you happened. You didn't,
You happened.
you didn't like
Wow.
the listeners.
You happened. That's real though.
Yeah, like you have to leverage whatever looks you get. And that's outside of playlisting too, right? Like, artists will get write ups and they don't consider the blog that they get a write up on to be big enough or impactful in the community. And y'all won't even post it. And it's
Oh,
like,
let's talk about it. Let's talk about that because
this
that's
art this
real.
person took they time writing this article about you and you didn't think it was good enough to post on your page, but Rolling Stone article gets posted. Like you gotta like leverage everything because everything is content.
It is, and that's real because I have this conversation like because I'm really really good friends aside from in working with them with a lot of photographers, and they feel the same way when they're not like credited when they've taken a photo. And I think I need artists to understand that too because there are some times where these photographers will have big names, influences for themselves, probably bigger than the artist, and it's like, dude, do you not know that photographer is could literally leverage what you got going on if people would have known who shot it because of that person's, like it's crazy to me. Or even graphic designers. Like all of that to me plays into the cohesion of like things going. It's like you posted the artwork, but you didn't tag the person that did it, you know? Now
Yeah.
you done created a whole little, rah rah because now that person feels the type of way. Now you can't leverage that moving forward. It's just a whole thing that could just be like avoided if people saw the intention behind the whole vision, if that makes sense. It's like don't just think about the manager as the head honcho or the publicist. Like no, treat the photographer with the same respect, treat the
Yep.
graphic designer with the same respect, the videographer with the same respect. Sorry, that hit my chest a little bit.
No, because it's so important. Like, and I
Yeah,
feel like
yeah.
the more we start seeing artists crediting and just really being tapped in with everybody that's part of their vision in a real way, like you will see yourself flourish a lot more because now you got this photographer who took your album cover photo sharing your music now with everybody in their circle because they don't feel like you just hired them to do the job and that's it. Like they feel like they're part of your vision because you keep showing love to what they got going on because they helped you. So it's
Hmm.
just like music is a lot more of a community than people act like. And it
No,
really takes a
seriously,
village. It takes a village. Like if you
it
don't
really
recognize
does.
the village, you're gonna be struggling.
It really
Um,
does. Even when you think about, coming off the heels of Beyonce last night, like she is somebody where if some because and some artists do it, but I'm just thinking about some newer acts. Like Beyonce is a perfect example of how, and Rihanna too, on how throughout their careers you can pinpoint so many different people or creatives they're associated with because they're like brand architects for them. Like when
Yep.
the twins came out last night, I was jumping up and down. Why? Because I know Beyonce credits the twins.
Yeah.
Those are some of,
All the time.
her like first day. And she literally said it last night. She was like, shout out to my first set of twins, y'all. That's here with me. But as somebody that's been watching Beyonce for time, I also know, like, no, that's a part of the brand, the aesthetic. You know what I'm saying? When you see her band members, it's like, them girls been rocking with her for years. Or when she shouts out Neil Farina, it's like, yes, that's her hairstylist. She's the cat again, the hairstylist, the makeup artist, like
Okay, the stylist,
the
everybody.
stylist, like all of that plays a role into your development. You know what I'm saying? And I'm speaking specifically to artists on this point. Like all of that plays into the role and shapes of not even just your development, but your artist identity. I think that's what I'm speaking to too. Like a lot of the artists we've mentioned that I feel like a lot of these artists today be trying to get to, it's like they got a brand identity though. And that brand identity has been built over time.
Yeah.
What are you doing besides posting on Instagram and saying, well, I made a post and I'm not even trying to be funny, my bad,
Yeah,
y'all,
but
but like,
I get it's just the facts. Like
yeah,
you gotta leverage everything that you have around you, and you gotta value everything you have around you, and figure out ways to make sure that you're building a community around you to help you with your brand identity, rather than everything just being a one-off thing when it comes.
yeah,
Um,
we got a
so the
question
other thing
for you.
too, I was gonna say real quick before we get off the playlist topic,
Mhm.
the other thing that we have to consider now is audience segmentation, right? So one thing that
Ooh,
came with streaming and playlisting was we now have all these different subgenres that we are now catering to, whereas before
yes,
to put everything into one box and
yep,
that's it. And it is like a pro to it is that we just have all these different stages now for all these different artists to shine on that they didn't have before. Like perfect example is alternative R&B. We didn't have an alternative R&B station at Pandora before I got there.
wow,
I saw like there was a lane for it. Like there's people like once this stuff started thriving, like the Steve Lacy and the SZA album, it's like people are making this now. Like they're trying to thrive in this lane, so we need to create a space for it. They can't. It's not going to fit on platinum R&B hits. It's not going to fit on our traditional R&B stations. Like we need to find a space for it. So all of this different audience segmentation allowed us to essentially like lean into these subgenres and really give artists shine in these different spaces that aren't traditional. Or and that's even with hip hop. Like you have all these like mellow bars. Like that's not your
yeah.
average rap hit. Like this, there's a whole style of music, and we now can playlist and cater to that, rather than having to find a space on a playlist that only has 50 slots and the song might not fit, so you're not getting a slot.
Shout out
So
to Asia. She said we love the all R&B station, y'all.
thank you. So yeah, like there's just so many pros and cons to it. Like I would never. I love programming. I feel like I've been able to put so much money in artists' pockets in the last 2 years that I've been here. I hope I can continue doing this throughout my career, like just on a higher level. But man,
Oh, it's going this what the sky is the limit. I'm gonna ask one more question before I get into the game because we coming up on 10 minutes. Oh my god, it don't even feel like that. I'm
I
like,
know.
jeez. But my girl Angel Love wants to know, and this is the last question, y'all. Thank y'all for rocking with us in the chat. Don't go anywhere. How do you think an artist should go about putting out music if they are nervous?
Woo, that's a good question. It's funny you asked that because that's literally why I quit. Um, that's not good
Mm,
advice. Yeah, but that's part of the reason why I stopped doing music was because I had really, really bad stage fright. On top of just my understanding that I didn't have the commitment to it, I had really bad stage fright. So my advice would really just be to find ways to force yourself in front of an audience, and that doesn't necessarily have to be a big audience, right? Like I feel like a lot of people assume like you got to have 50 to 100 to 200 people, and that's when you got motion. Like find maybe, I don't know, have a gathering with your friends or a kickback, or do like a karaoke night with your friends where you're forcing yourself to
I
sing in
like
front
that.
of a group of people, and do that stuff, like do that consistently. Like always find different ways where you can put yourself in front of an audience of people, whether it be 5 people, 10 people, 30 people, 100 people, so that you're forcing yourself constantly to have to perform, because eventually what just naturally
Mm,
happens, and it didn't happen for me because I quit as soon as I realized that was my issue. I just quit. But if you keep doing it, eventually you're just not nervous anymore. Because you're just so used to it, and you mentally can put up a block to essentially just kill the nerves. But it just takes like anything like them 10,000 hours. Like if your issue is being nervous, you got to put 10,000 hours into not being nervous and finding
Woo.
ways to force yourself to be in front of the limelight and just get through it. And once you get through it enough, eventually you just like subconsciously train yourself. Like I don't have to be nervous. I know what I'm doing. I'm that, and it's really that. Just practice.
Okay, another gem for y'all. I hope that resonated because no, that was a great response. Now, as you guys know, I love to kind of create special moments for each guest. So today we're gonna play a little game before we wrap out of here, called R&B or Rap. I'm going to speak with the R&B queen about some artists that are, may have been historically known in one genre, but they dip and dabble in others. So I'm gonna name the artist. I'm gonna just spit it out, and I just want you to tell me like, I'm leaning more towards they R&B, they rap side. Okay,
Okay.
ready?
Yep.
Okay. Um, First one, I'm gonna go Ludacris.
Ooh. I'm gonna have to go with hip hop. I would say
Okay.
like he has some really timeless R&B gems. Like "Pimpin' All Over the World" is like one of my favorite songs out of his era. Shout out to Bobby Valentino, but I just feel like I just feel like Ludacris has like there's just way too many timeless like rap gems to
Yeah.
for me to just lean hip or R&B. I couldn't lean R&B on that one.
Okay, I love that. Somebody said Luda. Oh, somebody just dropped in the chat too. Not they want to play. Shout out to my boy Pa. She said Maxwell. That's funny because I just thought of him in them knees dancing like that. um. All right. My next one, 50 Cent.
Oh, it's so funny you asked me that because I literally had like 3 days ago "Want to Get to Know You" on repeat. Like I played that song like 15 times back to back. Um, if we're being technical, I would lean hip hop because of how many timeless records he got. But I'm gonna say R&B for him.
Yeah,
I'm
RB
gonna say
50
R&B
is
for him. Yeah,
yeah.
'cause he got a lot of R&B records. I'm gonna just play, and I don't if it's the same 5 songs for the rest of the day, that's fine.
He really do. Like I one of my favorite songs is I Was Your Best Friend. I want
That
you
one
around.
too. Come on.
Yeah, that one. Okay, next one. Missy Elliott.
Ooh, I'm gonna go R&B. That's an easy one.
Woo! Okay, okay. You gonna go R&B with Missy. Okay, why is that with Missy? You got a
Um,
song you like?
I feel like it's not even that I have a song I like. It's more so just like on top of the music, just thinking of her contribution to the R&B space and all the different R&B
Yeah.
artists that she was like so pivotal in developing into the stars that they are now. Like it's only right that I lean R&B for her.
All right, now you
What
know
else
my
would it
next
be?
one. I gotta go. I gotta go there. Lauren Hill.
Oh, I'm gonna do R&B. That's another no brainer for me.
Okay.
That's another album. Like I always come back to that album, and it's the R&B that resonates for me. It's not necessarily the hip hop stuff. While she is an incredible rap artist, I wouldn't consider her a rapper necessarily.
Mhm.
And I just would much rather hear her R&B stuff, to be honest.
Okay, got it. Somebody also mentioned how Missy Elliott has redefined music video game, and yes, she has as well.
Yes. Oh my
I'll be
God.
saying
Yes.
her and Busta Rhymes too. I would have loved to see them both in the verses.
Yeah,
Like
that
I
would have
thought
been
they would have been
insane.
hard. Okay, next one, Ja Rule.
Ooh, I'm gonna go R&B. I'm
Okay,
not even gonna hold you. I didn't really care for his like just straight up hip hop records. I didn't really care for that. Like,
okay.
give me a Ja Rule and a Shanti record, and yeah, we good. It's
Ah!
always gonna be R&B for me.
All right, bet. All right, the next one I'm gonna go. T Pain,
Oh, definitely R&B. That's another
the
easy one.
rapper singer himself.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's amazing. I think even he just put out that covers EP with all these different covers,
Yep.
like he and just really showcase his range and like yeah, we need
hmm
to put respect on his name.
All right, and my last one, as we come up on a minute, this is so crazy. Like, all right, last one. I got, I gotta put him out there. Drake.
Oh, why would you do this to me? I don't know. I'm gonna have to say a tie. I'm not gonna lie to you. I know you want me to pick, but I'm gonna have to say a tie
Okay.
because it's sometimes where I only want to hear Drake R&B, and he has some of the greatest R&B records of all time. But then it's like there's some moments where you just want to hear a verse from him and like really get in your bag and remind yourself like I'm really her. Like please.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna have to. That's a tie for me. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Don't be sorry. But I put a bow on this because we're so grateful for your presence and we know that it's a gift. What would you tell Jan 15 years ago? If you could
Ooh,
talk to her, what advice would you give Jan 15 years ago? To 15-year-old Jan.
that is a great question. Um,
10 to 15-year-old Jan, my bad.
I mean, I feel like so one of my most pivotal moments in like my career, and not even necessarily, it's not even a career thing that happened. It was just me watching. I believe it's called the Defiant Ones. I think that was the documentary.
Ooh, yes, with Dre and Jimmy Iovine.
Yeah, it was that one.
Yeah.
So I watched that documentary, and it wasn't even the subject matter necessarily that inspired me, even though that was inspiring. But it was more so just watching Dr. Dre be himself, right? So I hadn't really seen because at that point I didn't really watch too many documentaries, so I hadn't really seen a lot of these different musicians and producers and executives just be themselves. I'm hearing of the work that they're doing, and I don't know who they are as people. So I just saw him just being like this regular nigga that just got hits and just talking like he's just him, this guy from LA. And it really showed me like you don't have to put on no act to make it in this space. Like you can really just be you, do the work, and do your studies, know what you're talking about, and that's all that really matters. Um, because how you speak and say things, like obviously you want to be mindful of how you're talking, granted, but as
Yeah.
far as just like the code switching and all the extra, like just learning different terminologies for things, like you don't have to speak a certain way all the time to be impactful. Like if you're impactful, you're impactful. Like the work speaks for itself. And I feel like for a long time I was struggling with that, but just like I remember I would do panel discussions, and eventually I stopped liking to do panel discussions because I just felt like a sore thumb on the panel. Like I didn't speak how some of these other executives spoke, and I felt out of place.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, man, like be yourself. I hate to say it, but like really be yourself because you will touch somebody being yourself.
Okay. As
Yeah.
Sexy Red would say, you know it. That's my I love that. No, I love that. Man, that girl, I love that. But
Yeah.
woo! Oh my God. Thank you so much, Jan, for
Thank
joining us for
you.
this special episode of Behind the Business. Like when I tell you, like the gems drop doesn't go unnoticed, your present doesn't go unnoticed, like your impact on the people, on the industry, on the game. As my friend, it doesn't go unnoticed. I'm grateful for you. I love you. I know you got a whole community that loves you too because they showed up in this chat
Yeah.
and they're
Oh my
saying how it
god.
was such a good episode. Like they're like, wow, like oh my
Thank you
God.
guys so much. Oh my goodness. I'm just
I know.
like,
I'm like, I'm about to tear up too now because this is like, this is a moment, and yeah, people are just like great conversation, y'all. Like, and that's the point of this. This the whole point of Behind the Business is, to really be a community engine for people to know, where they can find resources. If it's not this show, maybe it's a guest on the show, or maybe it's something I may have said or blurted out, that may have it's inspired a thought or something like that. But again, we're here to motivate and we're here to inspire. And again, Jan, we love you. We're thankful for you. And I know everyone in this chat is because they keep going up. Like
oh my god.
one of the best
I love
episodes
y'all too.
ever. But all right, my love. I was gonna say, we're gonna close down the show now. So I gotta let the show go. So as I always do, little baby, peace and love
I
out.
thank you.
Look amazing, but these hoes be basic, like a two-piece. I'm a player, but you could be my bride to be. Okay, let's not lose focus. Need you to bust it open. Get there before the shit closes. Turn the fan on, but she's also. Some men don't like to speak, they like their actions to lead. I've said too much, I'm pulling up. Can you tell me how I can reassure you that my feelings run deep? No, that's probably too deep. water. Getting hotter and I'm waiting with ease. Water crashing on me while I'm parting your sea. I'ma make you act unruly. I'ma make it talk back to me. Gotta sing it love songs. I gotta sing it love songs. I'ma make you act unruly. I'ma make it talk back to me. Gotta sing it love songs. Sing it.